first of all, good afternoon and good morning to all of you. Thank you for inviting me to present here. It's very much an honor. And I would like to tell you more today about pre-registration of animal studies, and in particular, why it benefits research. And to start, I would like to give you one number and then let you know what you can expect from today's lecture. So this number is 9.7 millions. I think it's quite a large number, right? Well, that actually corresponds to the number of animals that we use in Europe every year for research, testing, breeding, and educational purposes. And I think I can talk for most researchers by saying that we would all like to see this number go down. However, we are also aware that, well, animal research is still mandatory and necessary for a lot of different purposes. And this is why one priority is to make sure that research is well thought through, well performed, and performed in a transparent and robust manner. However, at present, there are several issues that can, let's say, threaten the validity of these animal studies. And I would like to tell you quickly first about these problems, and then explain how pre-registration can be a potential solution to them. And lastly, introduce you to Preclinicaltrials.eu, and we'll see how you can pre-register yourself. So let's lead on with problems in animal research. I'm pretty sure that most of you are aware of the reproducibility crisis that has been going on for the last, let's say, 2 decades, where, well, basically we found out that most animal studies cannot be reproduced, which is, of course, a big problem. This has been raising a lot of concern regarding animal use and animal studies as a whole. And of course, this topic has been extensively discussed in literature. But if I had to make a quick summary, I think these 4 factors are the most recurrent leading to the reproducibility crisis. So first of all, issues with the validity of animal models regarding how well they mimic human and human diseases, but also their translatability potential or their external validity. Then lack of proper methods, so studies that are not really well thought through, or that lacks, let's say, method to reduce biases. We also have lack of proper reporting. So even when studies are well performed, of course, if they're not properly reporting, it's going to be very difficult for other researchers to understand what has been done and to reproduce this appropriately. And lastly, lack of data accessibility. Of course, that will prevent researchers and the whole community to have access and a clear overview of what is available. And this is going to play a role in the entire translational issue and reproducibility issue. Amongst these issues, I would like to tell you more about 3 of them in particular. So low study quality, selective outcome reporting or cherry picking, and publication bias. Now, I know many of you may be already aware of them, but I think a good recap will really help you better understand later on how pre-registration helps in these issues. So let's start right away. What do I actually mean by low study quality or threats to internal validity? Let's take this example here. When we're doing, let's say, a regular research study, research project, you will usually have 2 groups, an experimental group and a control group. And usually what the researchers want to see is they want to look at a specific treatment or intervention, and they want to see what is this effect of this intervention or treatment on a specific set of outcome measure or results. And of course, we want to make sure that the only thing influencing our result is this intervention and nothing else. However, any researchers can unconsciously include some external factors in their study, which are going to influence one way or another these results. This is often referred to as bias, and biases are systemic errors that can be introduced at several moments in an animal study. This can occur, for example, during the allocation of animals to their groups, in the way that animals are treated, or in the way that the intervention is provided, and also during detection of the outcome or the analysis itself. So normally, several measures can be taken to reduce these biases, like randomization or blinding. However, if they are not taken up, this will create clear differences between the experimental group and the control group. And these differences will actually shift the effect that we want to see in our study in such a way that the result will be overestimated or underestimated. And this will lead to unreliable results, which is, of course, quite a shame, considering the resource and the animal life that have been put into such a study. Now, this phenomenon or process has been already covered in meta-research, but I particularly like this research example by MacLeod et al. So in the systematic review, they looked at different studies evaluating treatment for stroke, and they made two groups, studies that reported randomization and blinding, and studies that did not. And as you can see, every studies who forgot to report randomization and blinding actually led to an overestimation of the efficacy in the treatment. So I think it shows how bias can actually skew a study and how it can be misleading to researchers when, of course, they will read this information. Now, for efficacy, this is, of course, a little bit disappointing, but I think that can even be worse when it comes to safety, for example, so believing that something is safe when it isn't. Now, this is only one part of biases because, of course, even if the data is even if the study is well performed, biases can also occur during the reporting of the study. So, for example, a result can just be very poorly reported, and at times, outcome will just be completely omitted, and this is what we refer to as selective outcome reporting. This usually occurs due to the belief that positive or significant outcome will have more chances of being published. This can be believed by reviewers or editors that will think, well, that will be better for my readership, or by researchers themselves thinking I will have more chances if I only show my positive data, more chances to publish. And this can usually occur for a whole set of outcomes, some outcomes, a whole group, or some time points. And I would like to show you one example here by Weber et al. So the figure that you see here is the final figure present in their manuscript. However, during the first round of peer review, one of the reviewers advised them to remove all these parts, considering that they were not interesting because not significant. Now, hopefully, they were able to reason with them and keep them in. But as you can imagine, if that was the case, we would have lost an entire time point, the 24 hours time point, and also lost some of the data regarding the other treatments that are presented here on the side. Now, if they had gave in and accepted this, this would have actually led other researchers to lack a realistic overview of what has been actually performed. And this may have led other researchers to duplicate some of their data unnecessarily because they were just not reported. So nobody may have known these existed in the first place. And sometimes this goes even further. I forgot I had the slide. This selective outcome reporting is actually very difficult to score because it normally requires to know what was specified a priori in the protocol. And normally most protocols are never available to reviewers or to readers. And this is something that we often see in systematic reviews. So for those of you who do not know, in systematic reviews, you always have to do critical appraisal of the studies that you include in the review or the meta-analysis. And that includes looking for potential bias, including selective outcome reporting. So in the graph that you see here, we scored bias on a three-way scale. Either bias is low, high, or unclear. And usually unclear means that there is not enough information to actually score this appropriately. And this is what we had here for selective outcome reporting. There was no information on what was specified a priori, no protocol available. So this is just very hard to score overall. And sometimes this goes even further, when it's not only outcomes being omitted, but an entire manuscript. And once again, this occurs on the fact that some manuscript may have more chances of being published due to their characteristic or result. And as you can imagine, this is very wasteful, and that prevents other researchers and people in the community to have a full, realistic overview of the evidence. Now, this is something that we also assess in meta-analysis. So very quickly, this is a funnel plot that we have here on the side. And all the black dots that you can see are studies that are included in the systematic review. So they are all placed at different points in the plot showing their own results. And if they are all pulled together into one effect, and this is represented here by this black diamond, we can see the effect is placed between 0 and 50. Of course, these studies are dependent on publication bias. So if we actually simulate the negative studies that are not present here, so in red, and that we pull again all information, we get this new overall effect size. And as you can see, it's much closer to 0. So what this means is that overall publication bias prevents to have a full overview of the evidence and may lead the community to think that an effect is bigger than it actually is. So what did I mean to tell you from this introduction? Well, first of all, we saw that several types of biases can lead to unreliable results by threatening internal validity, which will lead to a skewed overview. We may as well have lack of transparency or lack of a full overview of data due to selective outcome reporting and publication bias. And this may lead to unnecessary duplication and research waste. Hopefully, we can change this with preregistration, at least I hope. I'll put this on the side. So what do we actually mean by preregistration? Well, preregistration is actually the act of registering research protocols before conducting the experiment. And it will usually involve researcher putting their protocol document in a registry or platform, or filling in information about the document in the protocol online. And that usually includes stating a priori their hypotheses, providing information about their methodological design or their analysis plan. And why is this interesting? Well, this will first of all increase transparency. As I've mentioned earlier, normally this protocol are never available, so now they are. So that's really brought up more opportunities for openness and transparency. And they will be used or can be used to compare to the final publication and see the consistency between the two. There are different types of pre-registration. The one I described right now is more of a simple, let's say, pre-registration. But you may also have heard of registered reports. This works slightly differently from what I've described right now. So instead of only putting a document or filling in a form in a registry, you would actually, once your protocol is finalized, submit it to a journal and go through a first stage of peer review. And now if the journal accepts your protocol, you should usually get an acceptance principle, meaning that your final manuscript, once you publish it, should be accepted from the same journal, regardless of its significance, regardless of its direction. So once this first stage of peer review is finalized, researcher will go on with their study, collect, analyze the data, write their report, and then submit their final report and go through a second stage of review like they would normally do when you want to publish. This type of format is rather new, I'll say. It has less than 10 years of existence. It has been growing in the last years. In 2022 now, I think we have almost 300 journals that accept this format. However, for biomedical research, it is mostly centered around clinical trials. There are a few journals doing veterinary science as well, but much less than the clinical trials so far. So why would you choose one method over the other? Well, actually, both methods have great upside and downside, so there is no wrong answer here. The simple pre-registration I told you about is very fast and easy, and it provides quite some flexibility, so that can be nice. However, it does not ensure publication at all at the end of your study. While in contrast, registered reports, of course, are a longer process. You may also get rejected at stage 1 peer review, so that's going to take longer in this sense. And it may be less accessible considering that less journals are currently accepting this format. It can also be stricter. Well, of course, I'd like to note here that if there is any amendment occurring compared to your protocol, I would always advise to specify that in your manuscript, regardless of the pre-registration method you have been using. But here, this format will really have your protocol scrutinized and making sure that you have followed everything appropriately. However, the great part is that, of course, you get an in-principle acceptance, which is very encouraging to publish. And before we go on, because that's a lot of information to take in, I would actually ask you one question. So I will set the poll now, if I can. So the poll is, have you ever pre-registered a protocol before? And you have to choose between yes, no, no, but I thought about it, or no, because I don't know how to do it. Of course, if this is not applicable to you, for example, you're not performing animal research yourself, please choose no. So overall, we see a majority of no. A few no, but I thought about it. And a few no, because I don't know how to do it. So I hope that for the people in these category, in these two category, actually, I hope you'll be able to get to learn a few interesting things. So let me share the result. I hope you'll be able to get to know a few things today that maybe will be useful for you in your future pre-registration. So let's go on with this. I would like to tell you a little bit more about the simple pre-registration by telling you about registries. So I think the most famous registries of right now, at least in biomedical research, is Preclinicaltrials.eu. This is the largest clinical registry, and it has over 380,000 records. This started over 20 years ago in the year 2000. But I think what really pushed the registry further is when medical journal editors starting to request pre-registration. And I think this is very common practice now. When we think about clinical trial, most people will know this has to be pre-registered. So I hope something similar can occur for animal research. There are several types of clinical trial registries. Some are international, like clinicaltrial.gov or the EU clinical trial register, but there are also some more national register as well. Now, keep in mind, this is for clinical trials. What do we have for animal studies? Well, right away, this looks less big, let's say. So at the moment, we only have 2 registries tailored to animal studies. So the first one being Preclinicaltrials.eu. This is a Dutch initiative. And of course, as you have learned at the beginning of this lecture, I'm currently the daily director. And the second registry is the Animal Study Registry, which is a German initiative. So we personally only started in 2018, so quite some time after the clinical trial registries. But we are both registries growing. Of course, you may also know of other platforms or registries like the Open Science Framework or maybe As Predicted, which can, of course, also be used to pre-register your study. However, these two are not tailored specifically to animal studies, so there will be some downside in using them, but that's still, of course, possible as long as you pre-register please do. So now that we know a little bit more about the pre-registration process, I would like to tell you a little bit more about, well, let's say the research that has been done on this topic. So far, some meta-research has been done on this, and I would say that the results are promising. So I like this example from the study by Allen and Meller, where basically they have been looking at some estimates from the general literature to see the proportion of studies that shows negative or neutral data, so studies not supporting their hypotheses. And so in the general literature, we see 5 to 20%. But according to the study, when we look actually at registered reports, we get to 55% and even 66% for replication studies. So we really have a broader overview and a more balanced overview between negative and positive results. And this was also found in psychology in the study by Scheel et al., when they also look at registered reports in psychology compared to standard studies. And as you can see here, I think the divide is quite important here, that the registered report shows much more null data compared to the regular studies. So we hope, at least that's what they both conclude in their papers, that this is thankfully due to a decrease in publication bias and selective outcome reporting, considering that, of course, registered reports get accepted regardless of their data significance or direction. However, we see as well that in meta-research where, well, this is not focusing on registered reports, so like this study by Goldacker, they have been looking at the consistency between protocols and final clinical trials. And here already more discrepancies can be seen. So for example, here they looked at the percentage of trial with any unreported primary outcome. And we see that still 19% of them are lacking one of their primary outcome. And as well, they looked at the secondary outcome and tried to see how many of them were appropriately reported. And while we see 55% is pretty great, but it still means that 45% of the secondary outcome are not correctly reported. And this is something that we can see further in this study by the TARG meta-research group. Here, they did not only look at clinical trials, but at a broader scale, let's say, of data. And then we can see again that any outcome discrepancy is pretty high. And they also spotted differences in the sample size and randomization method between the protocol and the final papers. So of course, these studies has to be considered as they are. Compared to the two first one I have shown, these do not have an actual comparison. They only look at the consistency between protocol and manuscript. And we can, at least that's the reasoning I have regarding these. We can think that in an environment where publication bias and the pressure to publish is still present, of course, we may still see these outcome discrepancy occur. At the moment, there are not that many meta-research on the topic, and there are none that has been yet performed on animal study pre-registration. So these are still needed, and hopefully we will get more information in the future. Now I would like to tell you more about Preclinicaltrials.eu. Take this as a clear example to let you know how pre-registration can benefit research. And before we start, I would like to show you a quick introduction video, which was actually put together thanks to CAAT, considering that in 2019, our group won the Refinement Award. So it's quite a pleasure for me to show this video here today. So I'm going to press play, and I hope all of you can hear the sound appropriately.
Nowadays, still many diseases cannot optimally be treated. Despite the improvement of many medical treatment techniques, testing on animals is often still required. With performing animal studies, it must be done very carefully and well thought through before starting. However, not all information on previously performed experiments is currently publicly available, which in part may be caused by publication bias. Journals are more prone to publish articles with positive data than neutral or negative outcomes. As a result, researchers may also be inclined to only show their most positive outcomes and ignore or not mention neutral or negative results in their manuscript. This cherry-picking together with publication bias may lead to an overestimation of the tested treatment methods, leading to translational failure from animal studies to clinical trials. On top, many animal experiments are unnecessarily repeated due to lack of proper registration of conducted animal experiments. To prevent those biases, researchers can register their study protocols prior to the study on Preclinicaltrials.eu for free. Researchers can access our database, where registered protocols are publicly available and searchable, enabling them to look up which animal experiments have already been performed. This way, we can increase transparency and improve quality of research while reducing unnecessary repetition of animal experiments. Ultimately, this will improve clinical research and result in better healthcare. Preclinicaltrials.eu.
Well, I hope this was informative. So as said in the video, Preclinicaltrials.eu is a registry tailored to animal study protocols. And this is actually the look of our new website. So maybe many of you will be curious and go check us out. And you will see so far our old website, but this new look will be updated within a few weeks. And I would like to tell you now a little bit about how this whole preregistration works in practice. This is actually pretty easy. As a researcher, you will have to, well, first create an account with us and log in. And then you will need to fill in a form, which looks like this. The reasoning to use a form is that this way, every researchers have to fill in the same information. And this form actually focuses mostly on the experimental design. And it is also compliant with the Essential 10 Arrive guideline. So this type of information shouldn't be too new to researchers, making the form easy to fill in. Once you're happy with the form, you can submit it to us, and it will be sent to our team for review. We will check your protocol, and if everything seems fine, you will be registered on Preclinicaltrials.eu. However, if we spot any issues with the form, something is misplaced or missing, something seems incoherent, we're going to send this information back to you. And then you can review your protocol and send it again. And normally, at the second stage of review, your protocol can be registered. One thing to note about this process is that we don't perform any peer review or ethical review on protocols. As I've said, this is only an administrative review, making sure that everything makes sense. As well, once your protocol is online, it cannot be retracted at any time. However, it can be amended as many times as you wish. All versions will be saved in the platform. So once this is done, the protocol is part of the registry and is available to others. And once the study is completed or published, researchers can actually link their final publication to their protocol, which will enable a clear comparison between the two. And the fact of doing this actually brings many benefits that I would like to describe right now. So first of all, of course, this increases transparency. I've mentioned this earlier, but finding protocols is a very difficult task. So having one platform containing all of them is making things very easier for researchers and reviewers. On top of this, every protocol that gets registered here will get a persistent identifier that can then be used by researchers in their grants or in their manuscript to refer to this protocol, making this record findable and accessible, so in line with the fair data principle. Our form also promotes robust study design. So we, of course, request some information regarding blinding, randomization, sample size calculation, so many information about internal validity as a whole. And as I've stated earlier, we are also compliant with the ARRIVE guideline. So we hope that in this way, we will help researchers think about these methods early on in their review, in their study, in such a way that they will perform this appropriately and later on, hopefully, report it as well appropriately. And lastly, it also helps to decrease reporting bias. So, of course, poor practices like HARKing, so creating an hypothesis after the results are known, is no longer possible because your hypothesis is stated clearly a priori, and the same should also occur for selective outcome reporting. So this is one way of actually using the platform. A second way, which is at the moment the most current way, is to browse through the registry to see what has been and what is currently being done. And this hopefully help researchers to prevent, to duplicate a study which is already being done elsewhere, or to learn more about a study, for example, who got interrupted. We also hope that via this platform, we can help researchers to better collaborate. So we have an entire encrypted messaging feature within the platform where researchers can talk with each other completely anonymously. And we hope it may help researchers to ask each other for data or further information about their protocols. And lastly, of course, as you know, some studies may not get published in the end, but we still give the possibility for researchers to link their data or their result to their protocol in such a way that they don't get lost. And so the research is not wasted in this sense, which should, of course, increase data sharing. But we hope it may as well decrease publication bias by making these data available to others. So what do you realistically need to pre-register with us? Well, that's very simple. You will need to have an internet connection because we are not available offline. You will need to have a study protocol, and we would advise you to have it finalized before you start because this is going to be easier for you. You should have an account to Preclinicaltrials.eu, but this is very easy to make. And lastly, you should have a little bit of time. Now, as you may imagine, researchers have a lot of concern regarding the use of this platform or feel reluctant to use it. And we have made a list of the most recurrent concerns, let's say, and I would like to hear your opinion on this matter. So let's imagine that you would have to pre-register with us. Which of these concerns would prevent you from using the platform? And we have a few of them. So cost, lack of time, lack of flexibility to adapt to your protocol, data theft, threat to confidentiality, and other. If you think about others, please can you write them down in the chat? So the most common concern here is lack of time or administrative burden, followed by threat to confidentiality, lack of flexibility, and then data theft. So, of course, I hear you, and this is concern we have, of course, heard before. So I would like to tell you what we have been doing considering this concern, because, of course, we're trying to find solutions to make pre-registration as easy and accessible to everyone. So to anybody who are afraid about the cost, there's a good news is that there is no cost associated with using this platform. Everything is free. The only cost, let's say, in itself is your time, of course. Some researchers are also afraid about the eligibility of their studies, thinking maybe their study wouldn't fit in the platform. So you should know that we are very inclusive. We accept all animal studies from any researcher all across the world. Our name, Preclinicaltrials.eu, may be slightly misleading, but we accept protocols from any institution. And we also accept any studies that they can be confirmatory or exploratory, and also at any stage. So of course, we encourage researchers to pre-register, so to send their protocol when their study is not started yet. However, we also accept studies, whether they are active, completed, published, or interrupted. It's never too late to be transparent, and we really want to capture all this information. The second, let's say, most regular concern we have is, I don't have time for this. I have too many things to do already. And of course, we understand this. This is why we try to make the process as efficient as possible. The form that you have to fill is very short and focused. So it's only focusing mostly on the methodological design. So it's rather easy to fill in. And well, at least for most European protocol, I think it will take information from the Animal Ethics Committee application. So this is information that researchers had to fill in already elsewhere. For the Netherlands only, we have made a feature in such a way that researchers normally have to fill in information about their protocol for the animal welfare body. And we have made the link with many of these software, two of these software, in such a way that researchers can only click a few buttons and their information from the ethical application are exported directly to our platform. They don't even need to fill in the forms anymore. They only have to click a few buttons. So that makes, of course, the process very fast. And we hope to expand this further to other institutes. Now, for the researchers that are afraid about the flexibility in the platform, I have already mentioned this earlier, but we're very flexible. It is perfectly fine to change your protocol. Animal research is unpredictable. However, you have to be transparent and you have to say this appropriately. So this is why all amendments remain visible on the platform. Now, I think one of the most recurrent concern we have is regarding data and private information getting stolen. And this is why we put a lot of effort into making the platform secure. So first of all, regarding data theft, there is an embargo features that researchers can activate in such a way that their protocol will be hidden for at least 1 year. So if you search the registry, you will see that this protocol exists, but you won't be able to look into it in detail. Also, all personal details are anonymized on the platform. Nobody else except our team can actually know who pre-registered. Only your study center will be shown. And lastly, we try to filter who can access the detailed data. So only people with an account and who do log in will actually access your protocol. Others can browse through the registry, but they will only see title of the studies and their stage. So no detailed information that you would like to keep private. And lastly, I did not suggest this, but some researchers also don't know where to start at all with their pre-registration. And for this reason, we provide guidance and personalized help just to make sure that, well, everybody get the best experience of pre-registration. Now, very quickly, who are the people behind Preclinicaltrials.eu? Who is our team? Well, we have a steering committee made of 6 experts who are experts in cardiology, evidence-based synthesis, and open sciences. And these experts are leading our group, and they're giving mission and task to the 2 main employees, my colleague Annemarie Schomenver and myself. And together we handle the platform, the administration, and I, let's say, mostly focus on promotion, collaboration, and facilitating the process. We are also helped by an advisory board of 5 experts, mostly present in Europe and North America. We also have the chance to have many collaborators, mostly in the Netherlands, research institute and funders. And we also have started since the end of 2021 a group of ambassadors that will help us to better promote preregistration internationally, and you have their names here. Now, to conclude today's lecture, we have seen at the beginning of the lecture that several issues are threatening animal research validity, and that hopefully preregistration can be one of the ways to reduce these problems, mostly by improving transparency and data sharing and by helping to decrease research waste. We have seen that current research on the topic brought positive results, but that some improvement may also be needed. You have learned normally more about Preclinicaltrials.eu, which is a fast and secure platform that you can use to pre-register your own studies. And while so far pre-registration in animal research is not common practice, and we hope that can become common practice, and this is why we think it should be supported by all stakeholders, and we try to promote this as much as possible. Now, if you have any question or wish to contact us, you can always do so by email or by visiting our website. You may also check our social media. We have a LinkedIn and a Twitter account, and you may also book your own guidance hours with us and get started to pre-register yourself. And with this said, I would like to thank you very much for your time and your attention. I will paste this at the end of this webinar, but we would very much to have your feedback on this webinar. So we have a small survey of 5 minutes that you can fill in, and I will paste soon the URL in the chat. So if you could take 5 minutes to answer this, that would be lovely. And then I will just take any question that you may have. Thank you very much.